If someone could sit you down and hand you 35 years of hard-earned life lessons in just 5 minutes, what would matter enough to say first? Probably not how to get richer faster, not how to look more impressive, not how to win strangers. Probably something quieter, something more honest, something like this. The life you're building is being shaped every day by what you ignore, what you tolerate, what you repeat, and what you pretend doesn't hurt. Because most of us don't learn life all at once. We learn it slowly, painfully, in pieces, in the relationship that looked right but felt wrong, in the text we never should have sent, in the apology we never got, in the job that paid the bills but emptied the soul, in the years we spent trying to be chosen by people who were never going to choose us, in the moment we finally realized that being busy is not the same thing as being alive. And that's why this matters. Because some lessons take 5 seconds to hear, and 5 years to finally understand. A lot of people think wisdom arrives like lightning. One huge revelation. One perfect quote. One turning point that changes everything. But that's not how it usually happens. Real wisdom is more intimate than that. It shows up after you've been humbled, after life breaks your illusion, then asks you to keep going anyway. After you've lost enough time to understand that time was never cheap. After you've loved enough, failed enough, trusted the wrong people enough, and disappointed yourself enough to stop living on autopilot. And if you really listen, life keeps repeating the same truths until you stop calling them coincidence. One of the first lessons people learn too late is that almost everything in life has a hidden price. Comfort has a price. Avoidance has a price. Staying silent has a price. Saying yes when you mean no has a price. Trying to be liked by everyone has a price. And the dangerous thing is, these prices are rarely charged up front. That's why people stay in the wrong places for too long. The wrong relationship feels easier than loneliness. At first, the wrong career feels safer than uncertainty. At first, the wrong version of yourself feels familiar. At first. But life collects eventually. And one day you realize you weren't avoiding pain. You were just choosing a slower kind of pain. A quieter kind. The kind that drains color out of your life so gradually you almost mistake it for adulthood. That's a hard lesson. Here's another one. Not everyone you love is good for you. That truth hurts because it breaks one of our deepest fantasies, the fantasy that love is enough. But love, by itself, does not create emotional safety. Love does not guarantee honesty. Love does not make someone mature. Love does not heal incompatibility. And love definitely does not force someone to value you correctly. A lot of people waste years trying to prove their worth to someone who only ever knew how to receive it, not return it. They over-explain, over-give, over-wait, over-forgive, and then they call it loyalty, when really, it's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of not finding better, fear of being alone with their own unmet needs. But one of the most expensive mistakes in life is confusing familiar pain for real connection. The people who change your life for the better usually don't leave you emotionally confused. They don't make you constantly decode mixed signals. They don't reward your silence and punish your honesty. They don't only love you when you're easy to handle. Healthy love has depth, yes. But it also has clarity. That's something a lot of people only understand after they've spent years chasing intensity. And intensity is seductive. Intensity feels like chemistry, urgency, obsession. The feeling that this person has reached some hidden part of you no one else can touch. But intensity can also be anxiety wearing a beautiful face. That's one of those life lessons that changes the way you see your own patterns. Sometimes what feels magical is just familiar dysfunction in better lighting. And once you see that, you start protecting your peace differently. You start realizing that peace is not boring. Peace is not empty. Peace is not settling. Peace is what your nervous system feels when it no longer has to prepare for emotional instability. And if you grew up around chaos, peace can feel unfamiliar at first, sometimes even uncomfortable. But unfamiliar is not the same thing as wrong. That lesson alone can save people years. Another lesson life teaches quietly is that your standards shape your future more than your wishes do. Everyone has dreams. Everyone has intentions. Everyone imagines a better version of their life, but your life does not move in the direction of what you hope for. It moves in the direction of what you normalize. What do you normalize in relationships? What do you normalize in your self-talk? What do you normalize in your habits? What do you normalize in the way you let people treat you? What do you normalize in the excuses you accept from yourself? Because eventually, your standards stop being preferences. They become architecture. If you normalize disrespect, chaos becomes your pattern. If you normalize procrastination, regret becomes your shadow. If you normalize emotional dishonesty, loneliness follows you even in company. If you normalize abandoning yourself to keep other people comfortable, resentment starts growing in places you can't see yet. A powerful life is not built from one giant decision. It is built from repeated refusals, refusing what drains you, refusing what diminishes you, refusing what distracts you from yourself. And that brings us to one of the most painful lessons of adulthood. No one is coming to save you. Not in the way you once imagined. There may be people who help you, love you, guide you, support you, and that matters. But at some point, every person reaches the edge where no advice can walk for them. No parent can do the healing for them. No partner can develop discipline for them. No friend can make them leave what they know they should leave. No motivational speech can override a life built on avoidance. There is a moment in every mature life where a person realizes, with equal parts grief and freedom, that they are responsible now. Responsible for what they repeat. Responsible for what they allow. Responsible for what they keep postponing. Responsible for the shape of their own days. That realization can feel brutal at first, but it is also the beginning of power. Because the moment you stop waiting for rescue, you start noticing choice. And choice changes everything. You may not choose what happened to you. You may not choose what your family normalized. You may not choose the wounds you were handed, but eventually you do choose whether those wounds become your identity or your turning point. That doesn't mean healing is easy. It means healing becomes honest. And honest healing looks different than people think. It's not always dramatic, not always visible, not always inspiring. Sometimes healing looks like not sending the message, like leaving the room instead of explaining yourself for the 9th time, like going to bed on time, like saying, "That hurt me," without laughing after it, like admitting you're lonely instead of pretending you're just busy, like forgiving yourself for surviving in ugly ways when you didn't know better. One of the deepest lessons life teaches is that self-respect is built in private, not in speeches, not in captions, not in the image you project, in the quiet choices nobody claps for, the food you eat when you're sad, the boundaries you keep when you're guilty, the promises you keep when you're tired, the thoughts you allow when you're alone. That's where identity is really formed. And identity matters because life tends to give you more of who you believe you are. If you believe you're always the one who gets abandoned, you'll keep ignoring red flags until the story repeats. If you believe you're behind in life, you'll keep making choices from panic instead of alignment. If you believe your worth depends on performance, rest will always feel dangerous. If you believe love must be earned, you'll keep over-functioning in relationships that should have been mutual from the beginning. That's why one of the greatest life lessons is this. Your mind does not just describe your reality. It participates in creating it, which means the stories you repeat internally are not harmless. And some of us have been narrating our lives like enemies. We call ourselves lazy when we're exhausted. We call ourselves weak when we're grieving. We call ourselves needy when we're asking for normal human care. We call ourselves failures during seasons that were actually teaching us patience, humility, and truth. Be careful what voice you let live in your head. A cruel inner voice can make even a beautiful life feel unlivable. Now here's a lesson almost everybody learns later than they should. Success does not fix what insecurity built. You can be admired and still feel unworthy. You can be attractive and still feel unseen. You can make more money and still feel behind. You can achieve the thing you thought would validate you and still wake up with the same emptiness. Because external upgrades don't automatically heal internal wounds. A lot of people spend years chasing an outcome that is secretly emotional. They say they want success, but what they really want is relief. Relief from shame. Relief from comparison. relief from the old feeling of not being enough. And the tragedy is, even when they get what they chased, they often discover the wound came with them. That's why some people keep moving the goalpost forever, not because they're hungry in a healthy way, but because they're trying to solve an emotional wound with visible achievement. And no amount of applause can permanently quiet a wound that requires truth, grief, and self-repair. This is why life keeps teaching the same lesson in different disguises. If you don't face yourself honestly, you will keep trying to escape yourself successfully. And success is a terrible hiding place when it's built on self-rejection. Another life lesson that hits harder with age is that timing matters, but not in the way people think. People obsess over being early, winning young, figuring it out by 25, being ahead, looking established before they feel stable. But life is not a straight race. It is a psychological journey with invisible variables: loss, family, health, money, trauma, privilege, opportunity, heartbreak, geography, mindset. You are not late because your path looks different. You are not failing because your timeline has changed. You are not less valuable because your life doesn't photograph well right now. Some of the strongest people you know are simply the ones who kept going without public proof that it would work out. That deserves more respect than people give it. And still, timing does matter in one crucial way. What you keep postponing keeps shaping you. The conversation you avoid, the apology you owe yourself, the boundary you delay, the habit you excuse, the dream you keep calling someday. Eventually, someday becomes a personality, a way of living, a form of self-betrayal so subtle it feels normal. That's why one of the sharpest lessons in life is this: indecision is also a decision. When you don't choose, time chooses for you. When you don't leave, you are still staying. When you don't speak, silence speaks on your behalf. When you don't change your habits keep writing your future in your name. That truth can sting, but it can also wake you up. Because adulthood is, in many ways, the art of realizing that your life is not built by your intentions. It is built by your repeated participation. What do you keep participating in? That question can rearrange a life. Let's go deeper. Another lesson people learn after enough disappointment is that closure is often self-created. We wait for explanations, for apologies, for one final, honest conversation that will make the story feel complete. But life rarely gives such neat endings. Some people leave without clarity. Some betray without guilt. Some misunderstand you forever. Some never become the version of themselves you kept hoping to meet. And if your peace depends on their understanding, their growth, or their remorse, you may stay emotionally trapped in rooms they already walked out of. At some point, maturity means accepting that closure is not always a door someone hands you. Sometimes it is a door you build yourself with acceptance. Acceptance that it happened. Acceptance that it mattered. Acceptance that it hurt. Acceptance that you may never get the ending your heart wanted. There is strength in that kind of acceptance. Not passive strength, liberating strength. Because once you stop waiting for the perfect ending, you can finally begin again. And beginning again is one of life's most sacred skills. Not everybody knows how to begin again. Some people know how to survive, distract, perform, adapt. But to begin again with humility, with hope, without becoming bitter, that is a rarer kind of strength. It's easy to stay cynical. Easy to say love is fake. People are selfish. Nothing works out. Everyone leaves. But cynicism often sounds like wisdom when it's really just pain that gave up. Real wisdom is softer than cynicism. Stronger too. It says, I learned. I see more clearly now. I will not repeat what broke me, but I will not let it turn me into someone closed. That is growth. Another life lesson that becomes undeniable over time is that your energy is one of your most valuable forms of wealth. Not just your time, your energy. Who drains it? What drains it? What environments make you smaller? What conversations leave you heavy? What habits leave you mentally foggy? What roles are you still performing that no longer fit the person you're becoming? Because not everything that exhausts you is worth your sacrifice. Some people aren't tired because life is demanding. They're tired because they are misaligned. They are living too far away from themselves, saying yes too often, smiling too often, performing competence while quietly collapsing inside, staying reachable to everyone except their own inner life. And then they wonder why even rest doesn't restore them. But rest cannot fully repair a life that is constantly in conflict with your deeper truth. Sometimes what you need is not sleep. It's honesty. Honesty about what you no longer want. Honesty about who you are around certain people. Honesty about what your body has been trying to tell you. Honesty about the fact that some versions of success are too expensive for your soul. That lesson changes priorities fast. So does this one. People often remember how you made them feel more than what you actually said. That's true in love, in friendship, in family, in leadership, in everyday life. People remember whether they felt safe around you, judged around you, seen around you, dismissed around you, drained around you. And the same is true in reverse. You may forget exact sentences, but your body remembers atmospheres. That's why emotional intelligence matters so much more than people think. Not as a buzzword, as a life skill, as the ability to notice what's really happening under the surface, to hear what isn't being said, to recognize when someone needs understanding more than instruction, to know when your own reaction is coming from the present and when it's actually coming from an older wound wearing today's clothes. A mature life is not a life without emotion. It is a life where emotion no longer drives blind. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons of all. Your feelings are real, but they are not always right. They deserve respect, not automatic obedience. You can feel abandoned and still be loved. You can feel behind and still be on time for your life. You can feel anxious and still be safe. You can feel unwanted and still be deeply valuable. You can feel uncertain and still be moving in the right direction. Learning that changes how you respond to yourself in hard moments. It teaches you to pause before making permanent decisions from temporary emotional weather. And speaking of weather, here is a lesson most people resist until life forces it on them. Seasons change, and so do you. There are seasons for building, seasons for losing, seasons for waiting, seasons for healing, seasons for being misunderstood, seasons where all you seem to do is outgrow things. Not every season is meant to look impressive. Some seasons are just teaching you how to survive without abandoning your values. Some are teaching you who actually stands beside you when there's nothing glamorous about your life. Some are teaching you that who you were is no longer who you can remain. And when you resist the season you're in, you suffer twice. You suffer from the thing itself and from your argument with reality. Life gets lighter when you stop demanding that every chapter look like progress. Some chapters are about endurance. Some are about pruning. Some are about learning what not to chase anymore. And that leads to one of the most freeing lessons age gives people. You do not need everyone to understand your life. You don't need universal approval. You don't need strangers to agree with your healing. You don't need people from your old identity to validate your growth. You don't need to explain every boundary, every change, every silence. A lot of peace enters your life when you stop treating your decisions like they need public defense. Maturity is quieter than people expect. It's less about proving, more about knowing. Less about reacting, more about choosing. Less about being seen correctly by everyone, more about refusing to betray yourself for applause. And maybe that is the thread running through all 35 years of lessons. Life gets better when you become more honest. Honest about your limits, honest about your desires, honest about your grief, honest about your patterns, honest about the fact that some people were lessons, not soulmates. Honest about the fact that some dreams were inherited, not truly yours. Honest about the fact that your coping mechanisms kept you alive once, but may now be keeping you small. Truth has a cost, yes, but lies cost more over time. And maybe the final lesson, the one people spend decades circling, is this. Your life is happening now, not in the version of you that finally has it all together. Not when you heal perfectly. Not when you make enough money. Not when you lose the weight. Not when you meet the right person. Not when everyone finally understands you. Not when you become more impressive, more productive, more certain. Now, in this unfinished version, in this complicated season, in this ordinary Tuesday, in this body, in this mind, in this moment that will never return in exactly the same way again. That can sound simple, but it changes everything. Because once you really understand that, you stop treating your own existence like a waiting room. You call the person. You leave what's draining you. You protect your peace earlier. You apologize sooner. You waste less time performing for people who were never part of your future. You take your own loneliness seriously. You stop laughing at the things that actually hurt. You become more careful with your attention because you finally understand that attention is life. And maybe you also become gentler. Not weaker, gentler. Gentler with people carrying invisible pain. Gentler with parents who were wounded before they were flawed. Gentler with younger versions of yourself who made messy choices with limited awareness. Gentler with the fact that everyone is improvising more than they admit, because if 35 years teaches anything, it's this. Most people are not difficult because they are evil. They are difficult because they are frightened, ashamed, unhealed, disconnected, and unaware of how much of themselves they bring into every room. That doesn't mean you let everyone stay. It just means you stop making everything personal. And that kind of understanding gives you freedom. So if this video meets you at the right moment, don't just hear these lessons. Let one of them interrupt you. Maybe the one about peace. Maybe the one about standards. Maybe the one about closure. Maybe the one about not waiting to be rescued. Maybe the one about the hidden price of comfort. Maybe the one about your life not being postponed until you become someone else. Because wisdom is not measured by how much truth you hear. It's measured by what truth you finally stop running from. And if you remember nothing else, remember this. Life does not usually collapse in one dramatic moment. It erodes through small betrayals, delayed honesty, tolerated misalignment, and years spent disconnected from what you already knew deep down. But the beautiful part is, life can also be rebuilt the same way. Through one honest boundary, one brave conversation, one day of self-respect, one decision not to go back, one moment of choosing peace over performance, one quiet act of finally taking your own soul seriously. That's how lives change. Not always loudly, not always quickly, but deeply. And maybe that's the real gift of 35 years. Not perfection, not certainty, not immunity from pain, just clearer eyes, a steadier heart, and the ability to recognize, a little sooner each time, what matters, before life has to teach it the hard way again.